All right, welcome everyone to our presentation. My name is Julia Beatty. We are going to have a couple introductions in just a moment, but for now, thank you for joining us. If you haven't already, if you could mute your microphone just so that we ensure that there's as easy of access in hearing each of the presenters, we would appreciate it. Today, we're going to have a really engaging conversation on some of the equity and justice work that we do. So we are the Carolina Family Engagement Center, and if you could advance to the next slide, I will share a little bit more detail about the work that we do. So really briefly, the Carolina Family Engagement Center, or CFEC as we call ourselves, is one of 12 federally funded statewide family engagement centers across the nation. Our center is housed in the University of South Carolina's College of Education within the Office of the South Carolina School Improvement Council. And our lead partner in our work in South Carolina is the South Carolina Department of Education Office, specifically the Office of Intervention Services. And our work really does seek to provide professional development as well as technical assistance, and that's to districts, school partners, as well as families, and however they need support in developing and sustaining family-school partnerships. Our work also seeks to connect families and schools to local as well as statewide resources, including community partner organizations, as well as a team of University of South Carolina College of Education content area specialists. And you are really fortunate you're going to get to hear from some of those partners today. But just to give you a snapshot of where in the state we are, there are 5 regional family engagement liaisons who work across South Carolina. Several of us have joined the call today, and you'll hopefully get to hear from each one of us at least a little bit. But as I mentioned, I'm Julia Beatty. I work with the Upper Central region of South Carolina. We've also got Lorelei Swanson, who represents the Upstate region, Miss Renina Outing in the PD region, Miss Lorianne Galito-Patel, who supports schools in the Midlands region, and Miss Clarissa Hinton-Thompson, who supports schools primarily in the Low Country region. So we are all actively engaged in school partner work as well as district-based work in each of our regions. And what some of the things that we do are encompassed in the slide. There's many others that, opportunities that arise that we might respond to, but primarily we work with 30 partner schools, districts, and families through the professional training and development as well as technical assistance. We also have either currently or previously worked with a total of 31 teacher partners who we support with classroom level family engagement planning. And we've just kicked off another cohort that begins this fall and runs through the fall of 2023. We also are excited to share that we are providing advocacy and leadership training opportunities to families across the state through the Parent Leadership Program. Clarissa has had an opportunity to work closely with that program last fall, and Renina is sharing that opportunity this fall as well. We also work closely with school improvement councils across the state, and we help foster collaboration between schools, families, and community members in those school improvement councils. And finally, our work is really heavily guided by the South Carolina Department of Education's framework for K-12 family engagement, as well as the work of Dr. Karen Mapp and her dual capacity building framework. So with that, I will hand it over to Lorelei.
Our lead partner is the South Carolina Department of Education, and we have over 10 statewide community partners and many more community partner friends, as you see on this slide. And they provide us with very important resources for the schools and families that we serve across the state. Next slide. Our tagline at Carolina Family Engagement Center is equity, opportunity, and excellence in education for all families in all parts of South Carolina. So we serve all families in South Carolina, and our grant requires us to provide additional supports to our families of focus. Our families of focus are Latino, Latinx, ELL, and migrant families, racial and ethnic minority families, families with children with disabilities and special needs, families experiencing homelessness, families with a grandparent as the primary caregiver, families caring for a foster child, and families with low incomes. We address equity in education by strengthening capacity of districts and schools, families, and community organizations to partner more effectively to support student achievement and development. We focus on increasing student achievement and school improvement through effective engagement from cradle to career. And we accomplish this through our parent leader, teacher partner, school partner, and community partner initiatives throughout the state. And I'll now turn it over to Clarissa to introduce our panelists.
Next slide, please. So today I will introduce the community champions. Dr. Edwards is our PD ambassador. Next slide. Next, we have the celebrity, Mike Young. He is the Director of Equality and Division of Inclusion for PESOS. Then last but not least, we have Omori Fox with Serve and Connect, the North Columbia Youth Empowerment Initiative. And then we have Alexis Myers from the best school in the state at Congress Elementary School, parent liaison.
Okay, so I'll take it over from here. Thank you for those introductions, Clarissa, and for the information about CFEC and our work from Julia and Lorelei. And also thank you to the panelists for being here and taking the time to share information about the work that you all do within your communities. So we just really appreciate your time and are looking forward to this conversation. So I just wanted to sort of start out by asking if you all could share a little bit more about your organizations or the role that you have within your community, as well as share a little bit more about how your organization defines equity and chooses to act on inequities faced by the communities you serve. And I'll open that up to anybody. I see Mike and Omari, and I believe Alexis is here as well. So whoever wants to start.
Sure, I can go.
Yeah, sure.
I'm Mike, Director of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion for PASOS and the Center for Community Health Alignment, which are housed in the Arnold School of Public Health at UFSC. And so PASOS has been around. PASOS is a statewide nonprofit that supports the Latino population here in the state with education, advocacy, and leadership development. And we've been around since 2005. And we are community health workers. We are promotores. We are individuals from the communities that we serve. A lot of our team members were participants and recipients of our programs. And we see leadership. Leaders exist in the community. So we find ways to nurture that leadership, enhance it, make them even more reliable sources with more expansive knowledge on how to navigate systems so that they can guide their neighbors through whatever it is that they may be going through. And yeah, the whole point is listening to the community and then finding ways to activate those assets that they already are engaged in or possess themselves and make them much more effective leaders.
Thank you for sharing that, Mike. Yeah, I love that folks who work within your organization are from the communities that they're serving. So they have probably a great deal of compassion and empathy having gone through those experiences themselves. Anyone else? Omari, would you like to share?
Yeah. Sorry, afternoon, everybody. I'm Omari Fox, lead community organizer with Serve and Connect. The specific initiative is called North Columbia Youth Empowerment Initiative, and it's still related to the primary function of Serve and Connect, which is community and police partnerships. So essentially, police in their role as first responders encounter the community at different points of the spectrum in their lives. And the question is that we like to ask is, where are the opportunities to offer some diversion, wraparound services, sometimes groceries, whatever it is. Sometimes in enforcement situations, but also definitely a majority of the encounters is non-enforcement. So basically working in partnership to kind of identify and amplify what those services and opportunities can be. And then the youth initiative specifically came about 3 years ago around this time, late October, early November. And the research and just a lot of time on the ground showed that there was a desire and a need for a youth-focused initiative. So that's been in effect almost about 3 years. We've had different levels and stages of it. I joined the organization in early 2020, but I joined the Leadership Council in mid 2019. So I had a lot of opportunities to just be on the ground in North Columbia, meet people. I was Ubering at the time and actually made some connections through that. So I would say that's who we are in a nutshell. I often say we try to focus on the services that people say deep on the police for. So a lot of those social services, wraparound services, mental health, we actually try to really amplify those partnerships and relationships even further.
Thank you for sharing that, Omari. And I see Dr. Edwards just joined on. Just to provide the question for you, if you could share a little bit about your organization or the role that you play within your community and how you and your organization have come to define equity, and also how you act upon the inequities that are faced by families within your communities. And Alexis, I didn't forget about you. I know you're there too.
Hi, thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to share. My name is Zenobia Edwards, and I serve in several capacities. I'm very pleased and happy to serve with Carolina Family Engagement Center on the advisory board. And I'm an educator by trade. I work in Darlington County School District. In fact, I'm the director of Darlington County Intervention School, the alternative school for the county, and I've done that for many years. But I've also worked in education from the capacity as a teacher, as well as college dean. So I've seen it on many different levels. And I am the co-founder of a community-based organization called I Am Beautiful, and it's a girls' organization that focuses on self-esteem and leadership development. And we've redefined beauty and taken it from the physical to the character. And our beautiful is brave, energetic, assertive, unique, tenacious, important, fabulous, unequaled, and loved, as opposed to fingernail polish and waist and all of these other things that girls can get caught up in. So with respect to equity from a gender standpoint, we of course try to empower our girls with opportunities to grow and learn and to look at non-traditional careers and to do all of those things they've been told they can't do, and to define themselves from within instead of without. With respect to working with at-risk students and families, as I have my entire life, the focus is very similar as we try to connect them to opportunities that they have traditionally been kept from or have not been exposed to. So a lot of that is redirecting their thinking and their confidence levels and exposing them to opportunities and, really teaching them how to navigate waters that they've never even had an opportunity to know they could swim in before. So it becomes a lot of coaching. Even my experience in higher ed was with marginalized populations because it was with at-risk freshmen and adult degree learners. So it's always all been these populations who've been kind of separated from what traditional opportunities are to help you get to what we define as success in America. And it involves education. So with regard to equity, we've tried to mix oil and water, if you will, and put the people that we're working with, whether it be education or in community organizations, families, put them in the places that we know will help them get to success and teach them how to navigate those waters.
Thank you so much, Dr. Edwards.
You're welcome.
Alexis, Ms. Myers, if you'd like to share as well.
Hello. So can you hear me? Okay. I'm Alexis Myers. I am the parent liaison at Congress Elementary, which is in Lexington School District 2. I have the best mentor, which is Clarissa Hinton. She's the one that had put me a part of this, so I appreciate her for this opportunity. I've been the parent liaison. This is my second year as the parent liaison here, and I'm one of the first in our district. So I've been learning a lot of things thanks to Ms. Hinton and just trying to go with the motions of everything. I started off in Boys and Girls Club here at the school, and the principal, I guess, saw the good work I was doing with being engaged with parents. So he asked me, do I want to be a parent liaison here? So I joined the team to be the parent liaison. As far as equity, I know our principal, his biggest goal is to be the best diverse school that we can be, because we are a Title I diverse private school. So my goal is to pretty much include not only our students, but our parents in everything that we do here at the school, and just kind of meet the parents and the students where they are, and just come from a sense of understanding. I'm young, but I'm a very old spirit. I have a very old school mentality. So I feel like my youngness with my old school mentality kind of comes together to help out, to, make the school the best it needs to be.
Thank you so much, Ms. Myers. And I think you already touched on kind of my next question with the role that you play at your school with family engagement. So feel free to answer this question, or if other panelists would like to, but how do you see equity play out or fit in with family engagement, whether that's in your connection with schools or within neighborhoods, within your organization, within healthcare? So that's kind of the next one on the list.
I can go ahead and answer.
Sure.
I feel like it plays a major role in school, because if we're talking about family engagement, how can we talk about equity if we don't have the families included? A lot of the times when they had conversations, it was always making these rules for parents, but not really getting their ideas to be a part of the rules. So I just did my first pastries with the parent liaison and kind of like talked to the parents and just made sure they knew what was going on in the school. And I pretty much told them, like, even though we're here for the child, I'm also here for the parent as well. So I want the ideas from the parents and from teachers and from students, just to better help us serve, the community. And I guess me coming from a Title I school when I was younger, it kind of helps me kind of relate to them in a sense, or be empathetic to what they have going on. So I feel like as far as family engagement, even though we want to give them equal opportunities, we do know that some families, they need a little more resources than another family. Why give a family of one 5 apples and give another family of five apples when you can give them, kind of like balance it out so they can have the same resources, but in the way that is equal, if I'm making sense, that, that it helps them in a way. Like, we want to be equal, but we also want to make sure the resources are readily available if it's more that's needed.
Yeah, I think you just perfectly kind of distinguished between equity and equality there. So some folks might need some more supports to kind of get to share what's needed at the school. So thank you for that. Anyone else? Sounds like you've touched on this kind of in your previous answer, but go ahead, Mike.
I would say, how does equity play out or fit in with family engagement, or how do inequities impact families? There needs to be efforts made to meet families where they are, and address the the barriers that they experience and knowing which are the barriers that they're experiencing. So speaking specifically about the experience of the Latino communities and families here in South Carolina, language is a big one, right? So, you know, having forms available, that's equality, and then making sure that there's forms in Spanish, that's equity, right? It took a little extra effort to make up that gap. And so that's important, you know, to make sure that families feel valued and welcomed and invited and included in these efforts, and that they're not just present, but they're activated and working with the initiative to see that the students and the schools are responding to the various needs of all the communities. But, you know, of course, I'm going to speak specifically about Latinos because that's what PASOS focuses on. And the inequities, how does it impact? I'm just going to just keep playing on that and just show that, like, it's all related to health. Everything really impacts health. 70% of health outcomes are related to things that aren't directly health related. You know, no illness, it's income, it's insurance, it's anxiety, bullying, prejudice, shame, guilt, transportation. All these things make health, you know, devastating health impacts. And we see life expectancies of people of color is 10 years lower on average than their white counterparts. So there is a heavy impact to this disparities, and equity is hopefully what it will take and what we can achieve to make up for some of those deficits in those experiences. But yeah, so social determinants of health, if we can reduce those, we will see greater performance in school, better health outcomes. It'll just all in all, you know, flourish.
Right, and I appreciate you highlighting the systemic pieces that really impact a person's day-to-day lived experience, not only for themselves, but also for their family. And I think Omari is, I'm gonna pick on you next, Omari, because I think you and your organization, as Mike was saying, not necessarily having folks present from the community that you're serving, but also really engaged and really a part of what's going on. I think in my work with NCYEI, I've really seen that completely as a part of your approach.
I'm sorry, I'm processing what you said. I guess the first thing that comes to my mind.
It was a compliment, by the way.
Oh, I thought it was. You want me to respond to your comment?
Oh, no. The question is fine. Yeah, you can respond to the question.
Okay. As far as equity and family engagement, I guess when I'm in the community, I turn off like my academic brain, and I have one. You know, I'm a school teacher and taught art in high school for many years. Went through the whole process of you know, to become that. But I think as far as meeting people where they are, I would say the power mapping is very important. And then some people call it community navigation. I just call it a doorkeeper. So for me, equity in that sense is if there are services that people are entitled to and they're available, sometimes people in a crisis moment, whether it's sustained poverty or they just run into a situation, they don't always have the luxury of taking a deep breath and rationalizing and doing the research and whatever they need to do to be able to get the access. And then sometimes when they do, then they feel like, yet again, I'm running into the system, whatever the system is, whether it's trying to get funds from, you know, COVID, and then you don't have the right paperwork, or a long wait, and you're in an urgent situation where you got children hungry or just whatever it is. So I see our role as a little more the meso role of the intermediary. So we know a lot of people who have resources, and we know a lot of residents directly in the community. So early on, especially pre-COVID, we had a lot of opportunity to get those different stakeholders in the same room. A lot of people who didn't either know people directly at a personal level or just didn't know what services were available to them. So the thing I'm always leery of is, rather than just give people the information, I try to make it a little more personalized and be able to identify a point person within the organization, or like tell them Omari sent you, or guy, let me call my people and then I have them call you back. I try to just make it as personal as I can, but I pretty much call a one phone call town. So there are services that people just don't have the ability or the luxury to kind of research for. And then there are, there's like any place, especially in high poverty areas, there are missing services. So it's like, how do we build those frameworks and neighborhood connections so people can get access? And that's kind of something I'm always figuring out how to do better. But for the most part, I would say equity for our role is just that personalized, direct people connections, instead of making it so fill out a form and everything that you have to do. Just walk with people through a process. Sometimes you might have to do something for somebody, but I think real empowerment is maybe teaching and imparting information and exchanging the wisdom that all parties have in the situation, and then applying it. And I think sometimes we don't always give the community credit for their own wisdom. I think just sometimes in like these high stress situations, like I said, they just don't have the luxury to take a time out and draw up a game plan as much as they'd like to. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I think it really did. And I think it also emphasizes one, that there are strengths and knowledge within the community, and the importance of relationship building and trust building as part of the work, so that when you are distressed or there is a community member who is facing an inequity, they can, they know that their network is there and their supports are there, and who to rely on and connect to in those times. Thank you for that, Omari. And Dr. Edwards, did you want to share?
So many good things have been, good comments. I'm sitting here bursting, not want to say amen.
No,
Yes, brother, because it's also true. The healthcare comment, I mean, what people sometimes don't want to include with that is mental health is healthcare. Adverse childhood experiences that feed into how, this generational traps sometimes that's set. We have to give credence to that and the role that it plays sometimes, the trauma that's passed on from one place to the other, and the systems sometimes that will just scoop up people. To piggyback on what Mr. Fox said, that's true. We come sometimes, especially in education, we get so systems oriented. I reminded my faculty not long ago, don't let systems let you forget about your purpose in being here. Because at the end of the systems, at the end of the data crunch, at the end of, all of these programs is a person. At the end of all of these numbers, at the end of these forms, there's a person. And so the community does have the wisdom, and you have to respect that wisdom, and that whole meeting the family, meeting the person where they are. I'd like to add to that, meet them where they are with humility. Because sometimes the whole effort for equity and inclusion, don't meet them where they are with an attitude of I'm better than you, or you don't belong here, or you look funny, or that's what you want, or this, because that there's a sense of that, this air of I'm better than, and that's a turnoff from go. So it has to be meet them where they are with humility and come on, let me help you. Those of us who know have to be willing, wanting, and able to go into the places of those that don't and welcome them, and go into their place and be comfortable there and show them and usher them and go where they want to go. Because sometimes they don't want to go. We can't assume that we know better than them, because the community has the wisdom. Their stories and narratives matter, and we have to respect their stories as much as we want them to respect the systems that have been developed.
Dr. Edwards, I feel like there are people here who want to say amen to what you just said. That was very well stated. I don't have more to contribute there. The next question I wanted to pose, and you all I think have touched on this, Ms. Myers mentioned this earlier, is how do you incorporate stakeholder or family or community input into and voices and stories into finding solutions for equity issues that your organization addresses? And anyone can go first.
I'll be brief.
Yeah.
I think you just have to be honest with people, and certainly a lot of deep listening. So honesty in the sense of I wouldn't promise anything to somebody in crisis that you might can deliver. Like if you know we have a bona fide connection and we can do it, we certainly will do everything on our end to get leverage. But there are a lot of things that that take a process or whatever it is, and people don't always understand like some of the politics or just the rigmarole of how to get to it. So I think if we're just very clear about like what role we're showing up in the community for, and I think before you do a lot of community work, you have to be visually on the ground first, even before the relationships, like just so you're not, just some random person coming out thin air. And then once those relationships can be built, then that's where the deep listening phase comes in. So like we got a pretty wide template of like what we can try to amplify in people. But for the most part, you got to start with, you have to listen to some of those stories that are very traumatizing. You got to spend time with people sometimes and do a lot of self-care. Like one thing I always try to advocate for is, the folks of us who do this work and work around a lot of trauma or just very challenging energy, is to make sure that we're on our A game so that we can be present, for the people that are trying to be the best community servants for. And then, like I said, from there, early on pre-COVID was, I don't want to call it a golden age, but I felt like we were really approaching a lot of critical mass in the movement. I think we are where we are as far as the pandemic and whatever the other side is. So these kind of safety protocols and everything are going to still be in effect. And I certainly think that we still have to pivot from some of the more things that we'd like to do and still address a lot of those resource needs, especially around hunger and things like that. So basically for like most of 2020, we did have to make a hard pivot of knowing the harvest hopes and, the senior resources and just any of those more direct food pantry type services, and had to really amplify supporting people and getting access to that. But I don't want to take too much time over that, but I would say whenever it is the opportunity for people to be at the table and just putting everybody, to me, equity is like there's no hierarchy. Like I can have my million degrees, but when we talking about community issues, sometimes you do got to adapt your language a little bit, but I would say you score more points with people by listening and hearing those kind of personal narratives. And then when people have that opportunity to decompress, then you could start to bring in maybe some more concrete action items or planning or writing up a chart and a continuum to try to move people into prosperity. But honesty, clear communication, deep listening, be the fundamentals for me.
Thank you, Omari. Ms. Myers, I wanted to follow up with you about that because you mentioned really making a very conscious and intentional effort to hear parent voice and family voice at your school. So I was hoping you'd talk on that a bit.
Yes, like I said, I had my first pastries with the parent liaison this past Friday, or last Friday. And just prior to it, me and Ms. Hinton, we made our way to go in our Colorado line, and we gave stickies or reminders to the parents, you know, saying, hey, don't forget Patriots with the Parent Liaison tomorrow, please join us. And through that, a lot of parents are saying, well, this time doesn't really work for me. Or you had some saying, well, I'm only the grandparent and this time is a little too early. So in that, we were able to like kind of see what fits for all, you know, all areas, whether they're younger, older. We have our parents that works and they have multiple children. So it's just kind of see where they're coming from. And with me working from Boys and Girls Club, I can kind of have more one-on-one conversations with my parents where they're more open to telling me what's their situation. And, you know, like I said, I'm very empathetic when it comes down to people. I have a huge heart and I try. It's hard for me not to help everyone that, as much as I can. And so just hearing their stories and just kind of putting their stories in place, because everybody doesn't come from a wealthy background, just like everyone doesn't come from a not so wealthy background. So just hearing different ideas and different backgrounds and just kind of coming together, even with our SIC, our School Improvement Committee, our principal wanted to make sure our committee was very well diverse. So we can have all backgrounds come to the table and kind of just see what each person is going through and help out and see what we can do as a school to improve. Like Mr. Young said, you know, with the Latino community, we have a lot of Latinos that's here at the school. I'm not bilingual by any means necessary. So, you know, with those communities, it's hard to kind of communicate with them, but more and more we have translators now that I can call and kind of bring it in to help out, just so we can make sure every piece of the puzzle is kind of in together, whether it's Latinos, Black, Caucasian, any type. We just try to make sure everybody is at the table and we want to include them in the conversations. And I'm the type of person I've been told or taught, we're not teaching these parents how to be a parent. We're just simply trying to help them improve their ways or help them be more engaged so they can see, hey, yeah, I can change this and I can change that. A lot in my slideshow, I told parents 9 points. And I would say, you know, be a positive role model, come up with a healthy schedule for your kids, and don't forget yourself in the situation, know your limitations. And I know a lot of parents have came back to me and saying, you know, this week I'm gonna take the time to spend time with my child, or I'm gonna take the time to communicate more with the teacher to see what's going on. So I just feel like once you hear them, a lot of parents don't feel like they're heard when they talk to a teacher. So it's good that they have somebody that's trusted, that they can trust, you know, and they can talk to and actually hear their side of the story and actually implement it into what we have going on in the school.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. And I do want to hear from Dr. Edwards and Mike here. I'm just so enthralled with what you all have been talking about that I realize the time is kind of reaching the end for our session. So I want to make sure and reserve 5 minutes at the end of our session for questions. But Mike and Dr. Edwards, if you'd like to answer that question, or any final thoughts or conclusions as we begin to wrap up the discussion portion.
Well, I would just, they said the key thing is listening to your constituents and trying to include them and as much as possible. And I think when I think about all the organizations I work with, that's what we tried to do. Our girls organization, we're 18 years, and all the programming that we have has been driven by listening to the different voices every year that we hear from our girls. They have voices. If they'll say, we'd like to do this, and we'll try to listen to them and go to our community partners and try to add that feature to the program. It's the same thing here with working with my students at DCIS. I'll try to listen to them. In fact, from the founding of this school, I brought together parents and students and said, okay, what do you see when you think about this? What about the uniforms? What about the rules? And, just hearing their voices and trying to build out what they say and staying true to that so that they know that I respect what they say. Here's what you said that you wanted. So if it's violated, or if we don't have some fidelity in what we say, these are the rules or parameters that you set. Let's have a conversation if you can't honor it. Because I think sometimes that's where things fall. I talked about those systems earlier. I think it falls if voices aren't heard, and that's been said before. Every voice, because I find in my work, a lot of times populations that have been marginalized, they're not used to even speaking because they don't feel like their voice matters. So I encourage the talk. I want to hear your voice, and then I want to put it up on the board, and then I want to print it, and then I want us to hold true to it because that's empowering. And so that's how I try to push inclusion from that standpoint, listening to the voices of everybody in the room, in the community.
Thank you so much, Dr. Edwards.
I'll try and do it quick also.
Sure.
So yeah, I think it's important to different areas, different arenas that we hold conversations, community conversations, whether that be finding places that people already gather and congregate, churches, community centers, YMCAs, sports teams, and just kind of host a conversation, whether that be with the kids or the parents, and just get a sense of what's going on. And also they have things that they're doing, communities look out for each other, and finding out what the initiatives they have going on in their own neighborhoods, and then finding ways to connect them with other organizations that have similar missions that are aligned, so that they might not have known that organization existed, and the organization may not have known how to reach out. So being that bridge is important. And then, so playing along with that, going in with humility is super important. Paulo Freire is really known for that balancing kind of relationship. And he says, a true change maker is based on their ability to trust that the community, the individual, the one you're working with, has the ability to dream, to create, to build, to act, to know all these things, right? They have experience and something to give, and seeing all those assets is kind of the starting place. So they'll know when they feel like their assets have been valued, and they'll know when they feel like their assets haven't been valued.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your very thoughtful sharing and experiences. I'm going to go ahead and transfer over to Julia, who's going to open the floor for questions.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to each one of you. I think there are about 1,000 questions we all want to ask you now, but with the 6 or 7 minutes we have remaining, I would love to invite our attendees. If you've been sitting on a burning question, or you've got one that's just come to mind, if you want to unmute and share, or if you would like to put that in the chat, we would be more than happy to take any questions you have. And whether you want to direct that at the full panel or at one particular speaker, we would invite you to share those right now.
And I'll also go ahead and share some of the information from our organizations that are present here today, our community partners. If this PowerPoint is shared with the participants and viewers, you'll be able to link to their organization websites on this slide.
I just wanted to say thank you. I'm gonna get ready to turn my camera on. There I am. I just wanted to say thank you. And I'm down here in the Low Country area, and I have 3 boys, and 2 are in elementary and 1's in middle school. And I have done my best to be a part of the School Improvement Council, to be part of that, and to, I want to keep eyes on my boys, how they're doing in school, but then also, how are they treated, all that sort of stuff. My children are biracial, but that doesn't matter. We all need to be treated equally and fair. But I've definitely been a part of that. And just this year in middle school, the principal did ask me if I would be interested in being a parent liaison. And I was like, absolutely, absolutely. And so, I'm eager to get started and how I can help. And I've also been asked to be the parent liaison over at the elementary school too. And so I know there is somebody who's over the Low Country, and I did get your information, so I may be reaching out to you, just to visit with you, pick your brain on really what that looks like and how all that works. And so, but I definitely appreciate all the work that you guys are doing. It definitely gives me hope because I feel the same way. Everybody's equal. We need to, meet parents where they are. We need to reach out to them. We need to engage them, because it is their community just as much as it is mine. Yeah, it's very important. My degree's in social work. I've done children's mental health, so I naturally have that. I want to help everybody. I just don't know how sometimes. I don't know where the resource is, but I want to help everybody, type of deal. But yeah, it definitely takes all of us to do it, and we meet them where they are. My middle child is on the spectrum, so I now come at it as a different view, parent, with that inclusion, acceptance, all of that. And so, that's just as important with that population as it is with everybody.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I know Clarissa will be eager to meet with you. You sound like a dynamic force for the Low Country. So I'm glad you've been here and glad you're able to connect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We just have about 2 or 3 more minutes remaining. So if anyone else wanted to chime in, now is your chance.
Julia, this is Karen.
Hey, Karen.
I had a question for any of the panelists. A lot of times when we talk about, getting input from stakeholders, we talk about, like doing surveys of families. I wondered if any of you use surveys or whether you found other ways that, because sometimes you don't hear back from, or you only hear back from a few people, or the people who may not be used to responding to that kind of thing may not respond. So there may be a part of the community that you're not hearing from. So do you have any other ideas besides surveys in terms of any sort of techniques or methods you've used to get feedback from families?
Depending on what you're looking for and how many participants, this might not be the best model, but I will tell you, for me, the best collection model is the old-fashioned way, and it is the face-to-face conversation or the group method of gathering information. In my experience, people are more honest and you get to have a more authentic experience depending on what you're looking for. Surveys work for some things if you're trying to get demographic information or just general yes, no kinds of things. But if you're really trying to determine how people feel about a certain situation or what they want to change about certain things, the conversation, the whole qualitative approach, I have found in my experience to be the better approach. And that's just my opinion.
I would like to add that sometimes the most cultural and community insight comes from some unlikely or not, the most like direct line of thinking. For example, like receptionists at any office, they interface with the community often, and they oftentimes hear what's going on, and they can give you kind of a patterns and trends that they're seeing. And so, looking for those who interact with community directly, those individuals can provide insights that, it's secondhand, but it would be good to get a general sense, and then maybe from there targeting where to look even deeper, as it's a good maybe place to start.
We have time for maybe one more response to that before we wrap up. Thank y'all so much for joining. I don't know if Amari or Alexis, if you want to join in.
I will. I know that, like I said, back to our little pastries with the parent liaison, we did like hand surveys where we passed it out to the parents, and right then they filled it out to say what was good about the event and what was something we could work on, and just positive or negative feedback. I welcome all constructive criticism. So I tell parents all the time, it would not hurt my feelings if you're honest with me. And also we're working on making a suggestion box where if they don't want to be known as the parent, some people want to be anonymous, we're going to make a suggestion box where they can put their suggestions in and we'll take it into consideration. And like Dr. Edwards said, you know, let them know that their voice is being heard instead of just saying, okay, we have this box for this reason, but not really using really using it for its reason. But we're trying to make a suggestion box so we can make sure we hit every point that these parents want to talk about.
Thank you so much. And I think that's just a great example of if we want to find out, there are meaningful ways, you know, whether that's in person, face-to-face, creating that box in the space where they're going to be, or any of the other solutions y'all have offered. And with that, we just want to say thank you so much to each of our panelists. You have been incredible. We are privileged to have had this much of your time because we know how much work and how much important work you do. Thank you again to each of you. And we have been recording this presentation, so we hope to be able to share that forward with the attendees as well as those of you who have been sharing today. Thank you again, and we hope you'll have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.